Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of House Calls, the evening program on Tuesday that is focusing on ensuring that you get the very best medical advice and the very best medical information. This evening we're focusing on addiction. Yes, there are several addictions out there. People think about addictions only about drugs, but there are other addictions as well. We'll talk about many of them. Perhaps not all of them in this program. Perhaps we would need about 2 programs to talk about so many addictions. But this evening, we're joined by the doctor in the house, is Dr. Alfonso Jerry Simon. Dr. Simon is an addiction expert, a specialist in addictions. He'll explain what you need to know about addictions, what they are, why they are bad for health, and how we can overcome the addictions. We want to also get you involved in the discussion. It's an interactive one. So weigh in with your questions or your comments, either online, or of course you can do so on telephone as well. So good evening to you, Dr. Simon. Really appreciate it. Welcome back. You've been with us over the past 2 months or so.
Yes.
So it's really great having you back. Yes.
Good to see you again.
Absolutely, absolutely. Always fantastic having you on the show. So let's talk about addictions. What is an addiction, and what are the common ones that we see here in Antigua Barbuda?
Well, there's several ways we can define an addiction. But addiction can be best defined, in my humble estimation, as an habit that controls you. Something that you do repetitively, excessively, that even though you want to stop, you find yourself can't stop it. But to give it a more medical context, it's also the changes that occur in your brain as a result of that physical addiction. So apart from the fact that you cannot stop doing something, or you have trouble stopping doing something, a habit that you perform that might be dangerous for you, it also leaves changes on your brain. It changes your brain chemistry, your brain biology. As a result, even though you stop drinking, and I don't want to disparage anyone, but sometimes we hear the term dry drunk. That would be a person who is not drinking anymore, but they still have the changes on their brain that leave them vulnerable. So we still consider them an addict, because that person at any point in time, when they're in a certain situation, it might be a song that they used to listen to when they were in the bar, you know, making love to their bottle, and they hear that song and they want to drink again.
Okay.
So even though you're not actively doing carrying out the behavior that you're addicted to, at any point in time, when you're an addict, you can be triggered to carry out that behavior.
So there's an impact on the brain chemistry as well,
yes.
And it's a habit that you might want to get rid of, or you might want to kick, but for some reason you can't.
Yeah,
Okay.
and although we generally think of addiction in terms of drugs and alcohol, well, alcohol is a drug. We generally think about drugs. There are many things that we can be addicted to. So a lot of the drugs that we're addicted to tend to have what we call a psychotropic effect. That is, they can affect your brain, affect your psyche. Now, we also can be addicted to other things apart from drugs. You can be addicted to, some people to playing a particular sport. Now, that might not be the worst addiction, but if it controls you, it can be bad.
Or playing video games, I suppose.
Video games. Some people are addicted to running, exercising. And I feel some of these addictions that I'm listing them as addictions, but they're still disputed in the medical world as to whether or not they're addictions. Okay. But we know things like gambling. And when you look at a person's brain who has been a chronic gambler, you see some of the same changes that you see when they're addicted to alcohol or other drugs.
Wow.
You know, even something like kleptomania. These are people who steal excessively for no apparent reason, and sometimes actually want to be caught to some extent. That can be considered a form of addiction. Compulsive behaviors. We often hear of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Right.
That can be considered addiction to a certain way of doing something. So all these, what we call process addiction or non-chemical addiction, non-drug addiction, can be real addictions as well.
But of course, there's so much focus on the drug addiction, for example.
We often focus on drug addiction, but something that's very common now. Internet addiction, pornography, social media. These are real addictions. I remember one time I treated a young boy who actually was sitting like this because he's addicted to video games. So even when he's not playing the video game, when he's walking, he's actually crunched over in that manner because he was addicted to video games and up all night playing video games. Sometimes don't sleep.
Wow.
Yeah, people can be addicted to sexual behaviors, to sex. Okay? And so they're all forms of addiction that we can have. And the important thing is to recognize when we have problems with an addiction and have the courage enough to understand that we need to treat it.
Absolutely. The note here in the orange box says, our reference point will be substance use disorders as defined by Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, DSM-5.
Very good.
Let's talk to me about that.
So there's a book called the DSM-5, and that's the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Psychiatry. It's something that we use to kind of make our diagnoses or make a reasonable diagnosis.
Right.
And they have several things that they lay out in order for you to say a person has a substance use disorder. We use the term to make it fancy. We don't say addiction. You know, you don't want to disparage your patients. So we call it fancy nowadays, substance use disorder. In the old days, it used to be abuse and dependence. You know, dependence would be a higher level, so to speak, of disorder. But nowadays, we cannot just call it substance use disorder. It can be moderate, it can be severe, it can be mild. Now, there's about 11 criteria. And I will not go through every one of them, but I'll give you a kind of general idea what these 11 criteria are. These 11 criteria can be defined as some medical, some social, some environmental. So when you have, let's say, 2 of these disorders, or 2 of these criteria, we class you as being an addict, mild. If you have about 4, or ever above 4, moderate to severe. Okay? Generally, past 6, you're already severe. So what are these criteria? For example, someone using a substance for longer than they intended to. Okay? And for more than they intend to use. The person is, day is being disrupted, their job is being disrupted, family life is being disrupted. Okay? Their way of thinking is being disrupted. All those are considered criteria for an addiction. If you don't use that substance, you start to show withdrawal symptoms. So sometimes you take the substance not to get the high that you previously got, but because if you don't take it, you're going to shake. Oh. And you notice sometimes alcoholics, when they're in situations where they haven't drank anything for a while, they start to shake. What I used to do, for example, if I know a patient coming down, when I worked at Crossroads Center, if a patient's coming down to the center to get treatment for addiction, and they're drinking, alcohol is their main, what they call drug of choice, we will tell them, don't stop drinking until they get to us. So sometimes they come on the plane, you know, quite tipsy. But it's better that way in a sense. Because alcohol withdrawals, and we're going to speak about that a bit later, when you withdraw from a drug, especially alcohol, it can be deadly. Not deadly? It can be deadly. Oh. You can have what we call delirium tremens, where you start to shake, the brain starts to get frazzled, you know, you start to see little men and big men. Wow. Wow. And the person can get a seizure and die. Okay? Or not even get a seizure, but they can die.
Have you seen that in Antigua, Barbuda?
Not that somebody died, but I've seen delirium tremens before. I've seen a patient who came to us at Crossroads with delirium tremens, yes. And it can be deadly. And it's something you have to be careful with. That's why I always tell the patient, don't stop drinking until you get to us. Why? Because even in the best hospitals, the best care facilities, once a patient gets to the point they have delirium tremens, they can die. Okay? Wow. So it's not something you want to play with. Okay?
So you're saying here's a situation where, apart from the effects of addiction, like drug addiction, and of course alcohol addiction is drug addiction as well, you're saying apart from the effects of it, there is the component where withdrawing from it under not regulated circumstances can lead to death.
Oh yeah, I often tell people, don't be a hero, especially when it comes to alcohol and what we call benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines are medication that you give a patient, for example, who's suffering from anxiety, okay, or lack of sleep, insomnia, chronic insomnia. So when you give them these medication, they attach to the same area in the brain, just such as alcohol. The receptors are what we call GABA receptors. The receptors that alcohol attaches to, those drugs attach to those same receptors. So we often give those drugs when a patient is withdrawal from alcohol to prevent them from going into withdrawals or severe withdrawals. However, if they get addicted to those same substances, things like Valium, lorazepam, you go to the doctor, you can't sleep, the doctor gives you lorazepam. He gives you, say, doc, I'm suffering from anxiety, something you can give me to take off the edge. They give you lorazepam, Valium, Xanax, okay? Those type of medications, you can also become addicted to them. And when you're withdrawing from those medications, it can be dangerous.
Wow.
Another thing as well.
So the medication to treat the addiction can also be addictive.
Oh, yes.
Oh, man.
And you have to be very careful as well when you are coming off a medication or when you're taking a medication for withdrawals. So let's say I have a patient who is suffering from alcohol addiction, and I give him a medication that I mentioned to prevent the withdrawal symptoms. If the patient is of a certain age, or he has a respiratory problem, let's say he has a respiratory problem, those medications can depress further his respiratory system, and he can die in his sleep. Okay? Going to severe respiratory depression and die.
Oh.
Also, if he has kidney problems, liver problems, I have to be careful which medication I choose to give him when he's withdrawing. Because those medications can damage the liver, can damage the kidney, and that can be irreplaceable. Okay?
Oh.
Especially kidney damage. Kidney damage is very unforgiving. So these are things that we have to, as addiction specialists, we have to be mindful that the thing that we do to save you, so to speak, can be detrimental to you if we're not careful.
And doesn't end up either being addictive or even deadly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Oh.
definitely.
We showed one of your slides earlier, Dr. Simon, the DSM-5 criteria for substance use disorder. And this is, example, alcohol use disorder.
Well, yeah,
I know you can't go into everything.
I
But
gave alcohol as an example.
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that I mentioned,
Right.
a person uses the drug for a longer period than they wanted to. Okay? A person uses the drug for, higher doses than they want to. A person who is, getting their job disrupted because of alcohol use. You're spending a lot of time trying to buy alcohol, get alcohol, hide alcohol, like I say alcohol as an example, the brown paper bag. So all those are criteria, okay? So like I said, the criteria can be medical. So I know that this thing is damaging my liver, is damaging my kidney. It can lead to cancer, okay? It can make me be the person I don't want to be, but I find it difficult to stop. Or it's disrupting my job. I'm going to the job not in my faculty because I'm drunk, and even though it doesn't look that way, I might not be staggering, but my brain is not where it should be. Or I'm going to drive while drunk. Believe it or not, one time I got a patient who works as a, let me see the name they call him, people who work on those lampposts, the high tension wires.
Wow.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually drunk and climbing up on one of those. So his workmates and work people had to bring him to me.
My goodness. That's highly dangerous.
Highly dangerous, but that's what happens when you're alcoholic or when you're under the influence of drugs, when you become an addict, or what we call substance use disorder. Those are the kind of things you do, I guess without thinking.
Because, of course, your brain
Impaired.
capacity is imperative,
Yeah.
of course. Let's look at, and of course, for the purpose of this discussion, Dr. Simon will be focusing more, as I said, on drug
drugs,
addiction.
yeah.
I mean, because we mentioned so many other addictions. Doc gave an example of, for example, gambling addiction, internet addiction, pornography addiction, and so
And
on.
those are becoming more popular now.
Yes.
With social media and, internet use and all these kind of things.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But we're going to be focusing more on the drug
drugs.
addiction. We have a slide for classes of addiction drugs.
Yes.
We're going to go up to that shortly. But just generally, Dr. Simon, how do addictions develop in the first place? Is it something that, for example, somebody uses a substance once and they, depending on who the person is, they get addicted to it, or it develops over time slowly?
Good question. Most disorders, medical disorders, are combination factors. They're a combination of your genetics and your environment and your personal biology. So what can happen? Let's say, Garfield, let's say you go to a bar, okay, or you go out,
Right.
an event, a social event, and let's say you're a shy person, and you see this chick that you want to check out. and she looks nice, but you're afraid to talk to her. So someone tell you, man, Garfield, take a drink, man, and go fire your shots, man. Shoot your shot.
Yes.
You never know what can happen. So you take a drink. Let's say that's the first time you're drinking. Now, alcohol is like a medicine, and that's what I get into. If you're anxious, the same way a doctor can give you a medication to ease your anxiety, alcohol can ease that anxiety. So you take the drink, you go and talk to that young lady, you feel good, things work out. But let's say after that you start drinking, you continue drinking. What can happen over time is that the one drink that you took that night that calmed you down, it didn't make you drunk, it wasn't dangerous, it didn't kill off your liver cells, it didn't kill off your brain cells, it just calmed you down, which is what the intention was. But then after a while, the one drink you took that made you calm, after maybe months or years, you might have to take 5 drinks to get that same effect. And then you might have to take 6, 7, 8, 9 drinks as the years go by, time goes by, to get that same effect. And sometimes you might reach to the point where you do not get that effect anymore, even though you're taking 10, 12 drinks.
And you keep chasing the effect.
And you keep chasing that effect.
Ah, I see.
And that's when the cells in your brain now starts to change. Because first and foremost, those receptors for alcohol are going to increase, okay, to deal with the more alcohol you're drinking. But after a while, they get depleted. And as a result, you're not absorbing that alcohol in the place that it needs to go in your brain to get that effect. So not only now that there's a psychological damage being done, or that you're not getting that psychological effect, but there's a physiological or physical damage to your body. You start to damage your liver, damage your kidney, damage your different organs in your body. And Garfield, there's something that, and that's what we call tolerance.
Yes.
You know, there's 2 tolerances we have to mention though, and I hope the audience can follow well. Because there's what we call the psychological tolerance. So let's say, Garfield, let's say when you drink 7 drinks, you get your calm that you need. That is your physiological tolerance. Okay? But let's say only 6 drinks might knock out your liver or knock out your kidney or your brain cells. That is your physical tolerance or your physiological tolerance. So what happens when a person overdoses quite often? They're chasing a high, and before they get to that high, the psychological tolerance, they reach the physical tolerance level, and the brain shuts down, the liver is knocked out, the kidney is knocked out. Usually the brain, when you die just like that, usually the brain that gets affected quickly like that, and the patient dies. And that's indeed a horrible death.
Wow.
I'm sure you'd have known of the case of Len Bias, that basketball player who was drafted
yes.
in 1986 by the Boston Celtics. He was supposed to be for maybe the next decade or 2, the rival to Michael Jordan. The guy was good, 6'8", bigger than Jordan, can shoot the outside shot. The man could dominate basketball. And, you know, his friends, when he got drafted by the Boston Celtics, at the time was probably the best team in the NBA, along with the Lakers. He went back to his school for them to celebrate. He and his guys, was mid-80s. A lot of college kids was using drugs, cocaine.
Right, oh, yes.
But that particular day, they seemed to have gotten a cocaine that was maybe a higher grade than they normally would sniff. And that was his last time. Sniffed the cocaine, got a seizure, and he died. Okay? I think ESPN has a documentary, No Bias.
Yes.
And I always kind of give that story to my students and to my patients, you know. Very promising young man. I think his mom was a doctor. I'm not sure she was a medical doctor, but she had a doctorate. And promising young man, good home. But drugs and alcohol don't respect what home you're from. Yes, the home is a key factor in keeping you off. But once you start using, they don't respect the home you're from, or your intelligence level, or the potential you could have. So it's very important not to start using these things in the first place.
That's a crucial element, because my next question would be on the matter of thanks for mentioning the tolerance, Dr. Simon, because you mentioned 2 tolerances, the psychological tolerance and the physical or physiological tolerance, right? Because there are some individuals who say, well, I'll drink 1 beer and I get drunk. Another person says, I can drink 4 beers and I'm perfectly sober. Yeah. So again, everybody is different.
Everybody's tolerance is different.
Yes, absolutely.
And however, our physical tolerance sometimes can be a little closer than we think. The psychological tolerance is what kind of the difference, because when a man is drinking, when a person is drinking alcohol and they say, I can take my liquor, they're probably more talking about their tolerance in terms of the psychiatric tolerance, that they're not getting drunk. Okay, it's not necessarily messing up their brain as yet. However, at some point in time, you're going to reach that physical tolerance limit, and it's very similar in most of us. When I say similar, people of the same race, of the same age, same gender, especially gender and age, they tend to have those tolerances, similarities, physical tolerance similarities, and they can be damaged if they don't understand that these kind of things can happen.
Extraordinary. Let's look now, Doc, at the slide you have here, classes of addiction drugs. This is crucially important for our discussion. Dr. Simon has, of course, gone the distance and that's a very gone as far as to make this possible for us. Let's talk to me about
I can see that, That's a very important matrix, because we have different classes of drugs, and we generally class them, and there's a number of ways you can class drugs, but you generally class them based on what they do to your body.
Right.
So we have the stimulants. The stimulants are what we call uppers. they tend to cause your brain to move a bit faster, work a bit faster. Those are the ones that sometimes athletes take to some extent to get quick reaction. So you have like cocaine, amphetamines, nicotine, something called cat that they use a lot in East Africa. Similar to cocaine is a leaf that they chew.
Okay.
And it's exported a lot to the UK actually.
Wow.
I think the UK banned it some time ago, but it's exported a lot to the UK.
Yes,
And
chewing coca leaves. I think I've heard about that.
And
yes,
caffeine as well.
Yes.
So these things are operants. They're stimulant. They make your brain go faster.
Okay.
Then you have, on the other hand, you have your sedatives. And your sedatives are what we call downers. Yeah, and we give them names like hypnotics. They can make you, put you in a hypnotic state, the chanting hypnotic state, or they can, we use them as anxiolytics to help people with anxiety. So for example, alcohol, benzodiazepines like I mentioned earlier, your barbiturates, these are often medication that you use to treat people with epilepsy, okay? Because it helps the brain to kind of calm down, so to speak, and prevent the seizures. You have GHB, that's gamma hydroxybutyric acid, a very dangerous drug. When you get addicted to that, Garfield, it's really dangerous.
Wow.
It's not easy to get off of.
Oh my.
Even physically you can get out of it, the psychological tolerance is just crazy with that, okay? Then we have drugs that, for example, your cannabinoids. These are cannabis, or cannabis is one in that group. You have what we call hallucinogens. And your hallucinogens are those that give you those, well, the name suggests hallucinogens. It's hard to see things that are not there, hear things that are not there. One of the classic drug for that is the classic LSD, okay? Lysogenic acid. And the problem with LSD, Garfield, is that LSD makes you see sounds and hear colors.
Oh my.
So, a man like you would know the history of music and stuff.
Yes.
And some of these songs in the 60s and 70s, you know, that was written, and you hear those psychedelic sounds and stuff. I can speak Garfield, these people are on some serious LSD, man. Some serious trip, they call them.
Yes, yes.
And that's why even the album covers have these swirls and colors and things like that. The acid trip, okay? That's a famous LSD. You also have PCP. That's a dissociative drugs, and that's a class of drugs we call dissociatives. These are drugs that can make you seem like you're schizophrenic. So they take you away from reality. You drift into another world, so to speak. You have what we call your inhalants. The inhalants are actually used a lot by children, okay? 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. In the States, funny enough, they're used quite more often, and they're the bigger gateway drug than marijuana, than cannabis. You know, we often hear cannabis is the gateway drug. No. The inhalants, alkene amines, the paint thinners, the glue. You know?
Yes, glue is a big one. That was yes, that was a big one when I was growing up. Yes.
So these are some of the drugs that the class of drugs that we have, and they have different effects on the body. That's why we put them in these classes. However, the overall effect of addiction, your brain doesn't differentiate in a sense. When it comes to addiction, your brain doesn't necessarily differentiate what you're addicted to. It's the process, is the chemical that changes, because dopamine is a kind of master chemical. Dopamine is kind of anticipatory chemical. When I know I'm gonna get something I really love, let's say, are you married now, Garfield?
Yes.
Like the night before you got married, and you know you're there. The
All
dopamine,
anxious and everything.
the
Yes.
dopamine
Yes.
is what was kicking in,
Indeed.
giving you that happy feeling, even though you weren't married as yet. So I tell people, like, sometimes people say dopamine is a reward drug, but it's not necessarily a reward drug. It leads to the other rewards. It's an anticipatory drug. And let me tell you, Garfield, we mentioned drugs, but the people who make movies, and especially those who make series and sequels, what they do well, they know how to hook you. So they know what to give you first at the start of a movie. They kind of set the stage for you. Then they, after setting the stage, they kind of set you up the plot, give you doubt. Okay, which way this is going to go? They give you what they call the big...
Who's the villain?
Exactly, the big question.
Yes,
and that's how they do it. Who's the villain? The big question. And then they give you what they call the head shift. The head shift is now, or the head fake. The head fake is, okay, I know Garfield is the villain, boy. You're thinking, watching the movie, guys, and then, no, it's Jerry actually. And then they give you a hook now. After they tell you who's the villain, for you to watch the next episode now, they have to give you a little twist now again. Yeah, Jerry's the villain, but did Jerry have the childhood issue that caused him to be the killer?
Indeed.
So, while we can speak about drug addiction, Garfield, I want people to understand the process in your brain is very similar. If you look what we call a high-power PET scan, these are the positron image scans that they use in the States and other places that have developed countries.
Right.
That you can take a picture of your brain, a colored picture of your brain. it shows the chemicals, the chemical movements and the chemical, activity in your brain. When you take a PET scan of someone who's an alcoholic, someone who uses cocaine, someone who uses marijuana for many years, and do the same for someone who is, let's say, addicted to gambling or addicted to some other vice, you see similar changes in the brain. Even though it's not a chemical addiction, even though gambling is not a chemical addiction, because of that dopamine effect. Okay?
In other words, it's the effects of it that are similar.
The dopamine effect.
Yes.
What are the
the cause of the addiction?
So even if the drug might be an upper, like a stimulant, or it might be a downer, like a sedative, it goes through the dopamine pathway. There's a pathway, the pathway in the brain we call the dopamine pathway, and that's very important. I feel I want the audience to understand that. That dopamine pathway, or what they call the reward pathway, all of us have it. What it does, it's a kind of survival mechanism, so to speak. So when you're thirsty, it's stimulated for you to drink water. When you're hungry, it's stimulated for you to eat food. Okay? Even things like sex and things like that, sexual urges, that's part of the dopamine pathway.
Indeed.
Okay? However, we do know that drugs have a more stronger effect, like a tenfold effect, stimulating effect on the dopamine pathway than other things, necessary things for life. That's why you'll see the experiment when we have the little mice and rodents and gerbils and hamsters on that wheel. They inject them with cocaine, okay, or whatever drug they inject them with, and they keep going on that treadmill until they just burn themselves out and die. They're not going to stop for rest, because when you're tired, that area is stimulated as well. But the drug now has a stronger effect than the natural pathway.
So it supersedes that pathway.
It supersedes the natural stimulants for that pathway. So that's why drugs are so dangerous, my friend. You have no control after a while. And a lack of control is what we call addiction. That is a real addictive process when you don't have control anymore.
This is extraordinary. This is absolutely eye-opening, and I hope you are just as riveted as I am, because just before we go to our first break, Dr. Simon, I want to ask you if we could just ask the control room to put back up that slide, please, of the classes of addiction drugs. This is because, as I said, I'm pretty sure that students are taking notes. This is like a tutorial being conducted by Dr. Simon.
Yeah, so you have stimulants, sedatives, opioids. Oh, I'm glad you put it back up.
Yes.
Because this is a class, I think I mentioned all the other classes except that one.
Yes.
Opioids. Opioids are the natural, well, it can be natural or synthetic. The natural ones will be like the opium poppy. And you and I had mentioned about the opium wars and things like that.
Yes, of course, of course.
But the opium poppy, heroin, codeine, morphine, oxycodone. But Garfield is a big thing now called fentanyl. I'm sure you heard of fentanyl.
And of course, the U.S. is trying to stamp it out as well.
And fentanyl kills over 100 patients a day.
Wow.
100 persons a day in the United States. The United States alone.
Yes, yes.
Other parts of the world, it kills other people, people as well.
It's a synthetic drug, isn't it?
It's a synthetic drug, okay? But derivative of opioids.
Yes.
Okay? Opioids can be natural or they can be synthetic. Come from the plant or they can be synthetic. And even a small amount of fentanyl, like 2 milligrams, can kill you. Okay?
2 milligrams?
2 milligrams,
Wow.
which is a very small dose.
Wow.
Okay? We know, for example, the government says you can have like, what, 14 grams of marijuana, 15 grams?
Cannabis, yes.
Yeah,
15 grams, yes.
Well, 2 milligrams, not grams, milligrams of fentanyl can kill you.
My
Okay?
goodness.
Can literally knock you out, knock you dead. Okay? And so it's a very dangerous drug. There's a similar drug as well in the same class called crocodile. And crocodile is what we call, in fact, fentanyl is about 100 times more powerful than heroin. Okay? That's how dangerous it is. And heroin is bad enough. But you have crocodile. And what crocodile does, it actually chews up the flesh off your skin, hence the name crocodile or crocodile. Okay? It's something that was started somewhere in Eastern Europe as a cheap form of heroin. Can't afford heroin, so it's about 20 to 1. Let's say $20 worth of heroin, $1 of crocodile. So what happens is that you use crocodile and you literally inject it into your veins. And Garfield, I've seen pictures of people, the flesh coming off their skin. So you can actually see the veins and they're still injected directly into their vein, not going to any flesh.
So hold on. So people see the physical effects and then still using it.
That's why I said they gave the name crocodile, because it's literally tearing the flesh off your skin. Some years ago, it got very popular in the Midwest United States, those Midwest region like Chicago, Illinois, those areas, Ohio, you know, Midwestern states, Kansas especially. Yeah, and it was a big thing, yeah. I think it's still probably dangerous now. And one of the things now with the war on fentanyl, you know, closing the borders, Mexican borders and other borders into the States, now they're finding other drugs. So whereas the deaths by fentanyl might be going down in some places they're going down, some places they're going up. Other drugs now are killing the patients.
Because they're finding substitutes
They're
for
finding
that.
like crocodile and other things. In fact, Garfield, people using, you know the thing that we used to sniff when you have like a stuffy nose? Afrin, okay? When Afrin, which is pseudoephedrine, that's the chemical name, pseudoephedrine, when it gets in, first of all, it does two things. It causes the blood vessels in your nostril to dilate and constrict repeatedly. So when they put on the bottle, don't use this more than 2 or 3 times a day. The people who manufacture it know that you're going to use it more than 2 or 3 times a day.
This is the one that you put in your nose to smell.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like when you have a stuffy nose.
Right, of course, yes.
Because, and they know it's addictive, but they're still going to tell you, oh, don't use more than 2 or 3 times in a day, but they know you're going to use it more. But that's one thing that it does, because what it does, when it has that repeated dilation, constriction process of your blood vessels in your nostrils, it actually causes you to get stuffy and then releases the stuffiness, causes you to get stuffy repeatedly. So it's addictive. But worse than that, when it gets into your bloodstream, it has what we call amphetamine effect. It's actually converted into amphetamine. And that amphetamine can get to your heart, the blood vessels into your heart, when it gets into your general circulation, and causes your heart to beat very fast. And that constant fast heartbeat can kill you.
Wow.
So most of these pseudoephedrine products now have been taken off the market, or you have to label them. You actually can't get them now without prescription, because before you could go to the pharmacist and get them just like you get in water. Now you have to get a prescription to get them. But what children are doing now, or what they used to do, and maybe some are still doing, and young children, they're getting these amphetamine inhalants, they're squeezing the stuff out of them, mixing them with other things, and getting their high from that.
I get the impression, that's a powerful point you make, Dr. Simon. I get the impression that a lot of the challenges we're having are compounded by the mixing of these things.
Oh yeah.
And we're going to talk about that.
Definitely.
Before we go to a break, though, let me just ask you very quickly, please. So you mentioned uppers, so the ones that make you feel up, feel high. The ones that make you feel down, so downers.
Well, when we say down, not necessarily make you feel down, but they down-regulate the brain.
Right.
Yeah. Because they actually can make you feel nice.
Yes.
But when we say downers, it's just that they kind of calm the brain, so to speak.
Yes.
And make you feel nice. The uppers stimulate the brain, so make you move faster.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one makes the brain move faster, one makes kind of slows down things.
Yeah.
Right. But makes you still feel good, right?
Yeah.
So that's why people get
And
addicted
I'm glad you mentioned that as well. Just before we go to the break, because
Sure.
it's important here, Garfield. A lot of times when people have what we call ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they're given stimulant medication, amphetamine salts, Adderall and these type of Vyvanse and these type of medication, which again they prescribe by a doctor, but they have the same effect. They're the uppers that we talk about, stimulants. And these stimulants can be dangerous, because what happens sometimes is that when children are using these drugs, or youths are using these drugs, sometimes they give it to their friends. Or they're going to university, going to college, and they want to be up whole night studying. So they take these drugs and they don't study, they don't sleep for a whole night. Sometimes 2 nights they don't sleep. And those can be dangerous, because we have had patients who have died, students who have died, because they kind of pull an all-nighter on the influence of these drugs.
Extraordinary. We're going to talk about some energy drinks as well. We won't call the names of them, but we'll talk about energy drinks as well and how they compare. So stimulants, sedatives, opioids, hallucinogens or hallucinogens.
Like ketamine and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, there's you can Google it, ketamine queen, right? The Friends actor who died from ketamine, ketamine addiction, right?
Oh, yes.
I think his name is Perry.
Yes.
Then there is the cannabinoids, and of course that's where cannabis comes in, and the inhalants. Of all of these, so where does alcohol come into this?
Well, alcohol comes under sedatives.
Sedatives. Okay, good. Sedatives. Which one are you seeing the most concern here in Antigua, Barbuda, of these?
Wow, I would say alcohol. Although cannabis is probably used, and I don't even want to say cannabis is used by people. I think alcohol is used by more people than any other drug in Antigua. Now, we have to speak about something we call the addictive index. Because Garfield, you have to appreciate, it's not everyone who uses a drug that's potentially addictive going to be addicted to that drug. So this is where the addictive index comes in. So he said for about every 100 people who use, let's say, cigarettes, tobacco cigarettes, nicotine, and nicotine is also an upper. That's a stimulant.
Yes.
Okay? And especially the vaping nowadays. For about every 100 people who use cigarettes, tobacco cigarettes, between 40 and 50 are going to be addicted. okay? Because a lot of, not only the drug itself, the nicotine, especially with the vapor now, it's even more addictive than the cigarettes. Okay, the vape, and vape is this little liquid kind of thing they put in like an e-cigarette. It heats it up and you pull that pure nicotine into your system. Now they want to tell you that it's an alternative if you want to get off smoking. But because it's more addictive than cigarette, chemically more addictive, is even more dangerous in that respect. Without the tar and things like that, but it's dangerous in terms of the brain effects.
So this is the vape?
The vape.
Vaping?
Yeah, I wrote an article recently on that.
Wow.
Now, the alcohol has about, so cigarettes have about 40%. Alcohol somewhere in the 20s, about 28% of the 100 people. Cocaine about 35%, very addictive. Okay? Cannabis has about a 17%, maybe a little less. And I'm going to give a little caveat on that, because that's, let's say, your grandfather's cannabis. Maybe not your grandfather, but
yes,
or collective grandfathers.
Yes.
Okay? Nowadays, what is happening is that they're engineering the cannabis. So Garfield, let's say back in the day, they say someone would have smoked cannabis, like the Rasta around here most of their lives would have smoked cannabis. It has what we call THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the active ingredient, okay? And that would be about between 2 and 5%. Nowadays, you can engineer cannabis up to about 50% THC or even more. In fact, the head of the cannabis authorities in St. Vincent, when he was here a couple of years ago, mentioned that in St. Vincent there were some guys who were engineering cannabis to over 30%. They had to, pull it off.
Wow.
Because it was, it can be very dangerous.
How did they do that? Do they,
you can do
some sort of grafting?
Grafting, you can concentrate it, you can get hybrid species from other places and mix them with your local species, and so what is happening, Garfield, with cannabis, and that's why I kind of mentioned that although alcohol use is more prevalent, cannabis is also dangerous in the sense because it's not our grandfather's cannabis anymore. So imagine that when you roll one cannabis leaf and smoke that, you're getting 2.5%. Nowadays, you could get a leaf, one leaf, same size of cannabis cigarette, and that could now be, let's say, 40%. So it's like smoking one, and so I'm smoking 40, or let's say I'm smoking 10 cigarettes of the old type, and you're smoking one and get the same amount of THC that I'm getting.
Absolutely.
And that's the danger of cannabis.
Because the potency of it.
The potency.
One is more potent.
One is more potent, and that's the danger of cannabis. So not because cannabis of itself that we grow, or we used to grow in Antigua on a regular basis back then, is really what they're doing nowadays. They engineered cannabis. Okay, that's the problem. And also what they add into it.
That's what we're going to talk about when we come back from this break.
No problem.
We also talk about the impact. What do these various drugs do to your brain? So Dr. Simon will show us, for example, a cross-section of the brain, and we'll talk about what it does to each section of the brain, right? And how does it produce the effects that it produces. We're talking about addiction to our audience. Really appreciate you joining us, whether you're joining us on television or online. This has been so riveting. I'm actually delayed for the break by a few minutes, but my producer would kill me for that. But thank you so much for staying with us. When we come back, much more. We talk about energy drinks. We talk about vaping. We talk about all these various types of drugs, stimulants and sedatives and hallucinogens and opioids. And as Dr. Simon says, the ones that he's seeing the most concern here in Antigua Barbuda, we'll talk about those and the impact they're having on brain. Plus, the mixing of various drugs. When we come back, much more on House Calls. Stick around.
Very good.
Reporting live from Caribbean Union Bank's press conference, where bank representatives will address its customers and the media, explaining just how CUB simplifies life through its financing.
Today, my team and I will share with you how CUB's financial solutions are designed to simplify your life. Now, let's open the floor for any questions that you may have.
How can you help me as a retirement?
That's a good question. We offer customized retirement solutions at competitive rates.
How easy is it for me to switch my mortgage to CUB?
With attractive interest rates and minimal switching fees, CUB makes switching mortgages easy.
Do you offer point-of-sale machines?
Absolutely. All point-of-sale systems can speed up checkout,
and boost sales?
Those were great questions, and our team is here to further support you. We're Caribbean Union Bank, the bank that cares, and our doors are open to welcome you.
Place so hot, Jack. I can't take this heat. Please, just do something about it. I can't take it anymore. It's not even summer yet.
He knew exactly what to do, because when the heat is this disrespectful, you don't just need a fan, you need a plan. He headed straight to Mikasa Imports, the home of media cooling, for our sleek 12,000 DTU to the heavy-hitting 24,000 and 36,000 BTU models. Starting as low as $18.99, Mikasa has the perfect fit for every room. For a limited time, you get free installation with your purchase. Professional, fast, and zero hassle.
Hey baby, and I got the 36,000 BTU just for you, baby.
Oh, that sounds big.
I know you like it big.
I do.
Later that night.
Baby, what's wrong?
It's too cold.
Too cold?
Lock off the AC. It's too cold.
Yeah, but you said bigger is better.
Not this time.
From Boosted Seeds, I carry no cash. I tap and pay. I'm done in a flash.
Adventure is done. We grab a bite. I tap my card. It feels just right.
We booked our trip and paid with ease. Checked my rewards. Upgrade, yes please.
Paid it online while out with the crew. Tap for drinks. It's easy to do.
They tap, I drive. It's quick, it's clear, no counting cash or waiting here.
I use my card to keep things smooth. And my rewards? Wow, they really move.
ACB Visa Credit Card. My life, my card, my rewards. Get yours today. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. A riveting discussion with Dr. Alfonso Jerry Simon, who is an addiction specialist, and he has laid out all the information. I mean, it's such a broad topic, but we're focusing this evening, so many addictions, but we're focusing mainly on the drug-related addictions. And for the purpose of discussions, as I said, and to be clear, drug addictions include alcohol addiction as well, right? So alcohol is a sedative in relation to the categories of drugs. There are stimulants, so that speed up the brain's activity. There are those that slow down the brain activity, still makes you feel good, such as, for example, alcohol, opioids, hallucinogens, cannabinoids, inhalants, and so on. Dr. Simon is spelling that out for us, but in this section of the program, we want to focus mainly on the age ranges, what Dr. Simon is seeing in his practice as an addiction specialist, the leading one not only in this country but across the region as well. What he's seeing in his practice and the ages that he's seeing it in, and especially the mixing of various substances, which seems to be exacerbating the problem. Dr. Simon, thank you so much for staying with us.
No problem.
Even before we go into that one, let's look at just for the purpose of our discussion, you touched on it earlier, that there are other kinds of addictions, apart from the drug one.
Yeah.
We're focusing on drugs this evening, but for the purpose of the discussion, there are other types of addictions, non-chemical addictions. Let's put up that slide, and Dr. Simon will just walk us through that very quickly again, please.
Yeah, we mentioned the non-chemical addiction, and you see the first one, compulsive disorders. Those are things like the OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, where someone has to do something like, for example, they fidget with their pen, or if they see something that's out of place, they have to put it back in place 10, 15 times. Okay, those kind of things.
Right.
Some doctors don't necessarily consider them addiction, but they can be in the broad scheme of things.
Okay.
Then you have compulsive spending, and I say including gambling.
Wow.
And Garfield, again, the people who make the slot machines and these kind of things in, let's say, Las Vegas and other places, well, here in Antigua now, we have so many casinos here now too, that they know how to keep you going. They know how to when to make you win, when to make you lose.
Or come very close to winning.
Or the close to win.
So
again,
you go again.
Get the dopamine
Yes,
going. So
yes.
you know the song, know when to walk away, know when to run, because that's why the gambler gave the instructions. You know when to walk away, know when to run, because if you don't, then you're going to get hooked. Then you have the eating disorders. Eating disorders is another form of addiction, and eating disorders tends to go along with the exercise addiction as well, where people want to lose weight, or they have this kind of what we call body dysmorphia, So they eat excessively, but then they will exercise excessively. Or they will restrict themselves from eating. That's another form of addiction as well, too, in the broad scheme of things. I mentioned their hypersexuality as well. Now, people have different sexual appetites, so I don't necessarily want to label someone who have a hypersexual appetite as addiction. But it can be addictive in some respect.
Like nymphomania, for
example.
Yeah,
exactly. Then I have internet, pornography. Those can be forms of addiction. Kleptomania, okay? That is this excessive stealing or this impulsive stealing for no apparent reason. Like one patient I had stole a siren off a police car.
Really?
Yeah, really. And he saw someone with a bicycle parked up, and he stole the front wheel of the bicycle and left the rest of the bicycle. You know?
He just had to steal something.
Just had to steal something. And they just put it in their house. So that's part of the whole process as well. You're not necessarily going to hide it away. You just leave it in your house and hoping that someday someone will come. Not right away, but you hope that someday somebody can come and see you steal it or see it's there. Wow. Okay? But at Garfield, two things that I want to mention, though, that are big addictions in Antigua. Well, one of them especially, sugar or food. Food and sugar especially. Sugar is a huge addiction. And the people who manufacture food, especially processed food, they know that. So things that don't normally have, you have to put sugar in, like ketchup, for example. You see high fructose corn syrup. Or a lot of things that you don't necessarily think you have to add sugar, they add in that sugar to it because sugar is extremely addictive. A lot of us are addicted to sugar. And what sugar addiction does, it takes a lot of energy to actually burn sugar, pure sugar, white sugar especially. As we spoke about in the last discussion
we were talking about
lupus.
Lupus, yes.
When the sugar goes into your stomach, a lot of blood has to come from your brain and other parts of your body to digest that sugar. That's why after a big meal, you tend to be sleepy, you tend to be tired. And I had a friend, for example, who said to me, hey, doc, well, a patient, I should say, my first addiction was that when I got home, I was tired, I was stressed out. I'll fill a cup, half of sugar and half of water, mix that and drink it. And from there, he went into cocaine. And I was often told, even before I became an addiction specialist, that cocaine is very similar to sugar. Oh. The molecules are very similar. Wow. In certain respects.
Wow. The chemistry of it.
The chemistry of it. And you see it, man. People are addicted to sugar. That's why the people who do foods, they find some way of getting sugar into that food, either sauce or something, and that sugar is extremely addictive. Okay? The thing what we call umami, that the name is slipping in my brain now, but that thing they add to food to give it that taste. The Japanese call it umami, but we have MSG. Monosodium glutamate.
Yes.
That's extremely addictive because the only purpose it serves in your body is to stimulate your taste buds. Wow. That's actually the only kind of unnatural taste that we have. We have sugar, salt, bitter, sweet, but then umami is the fifth taste. And that's just was made just for tasting purposes to get you hooked to certain kind of foods. So we have to be careful.
Of the MSG.
People who want to sell you things, they know how to make it addictive. That's why nowadays they add in all sorts of things to marijuana. Because it might not be the most addictive chemical, but when I add tobacco, nicotine to marijuana, it makes it much more addictive.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all those issues as well. My only concern is time is running out. I had so much to cover in such a little time. Okay, back to this one now, Dr. Simon. Just before we went to the break, we were talking about the challenges that you're seeing, the concerns that you are having based on the trends you're seeing in Antigua Barbuda. So you're saying alcohol is most widely used?
It's more widely used because alcohol is legal. I can remember cannabis is decriminalized, but still a controlled substance, so to speak.
Yes.
Alcohol is legal and more socially acceptable. You know, most places you go to a wedding, nowadays funerals, the average party, most of the fests that we have are sponsored by liquor companies, and you have the lots of liquor, whatever. So alcohol is more socially acceptable, so it's more easily available as well. And what you find when we don't have strong enforcement, I don't even know in Antigua, for example, if there's an age limit to buy alcohol, and if it is, it's not strongly enforced.
Well, it certainly is an age limit, but
it's not strongly enforced.
Right.
So what will happen, Garfield, you have a lot of younger people who are drinking alcohol, and amongst our girls, or amongst our youths, girls are drinking more between the ages of 12 and 20. We have girls drinking more than boys. And this is a phenomenon we see over the Caribbean and in other places as well, where girls, I guess, they get into the social scene a bit earlier than boys, the party scene, the club scene, and as a result, they're drinking at an earlier age and drinking more alcohol than boys are. Okay?
What is the impact that is? Are they becoming addicted?
They're becoming addicted because, again, Garfield, I'm glad you asked that question, because in the whole brain chemistry of addiction, the earlier you start using a substance, especially between the puberty age, let's say from age 12 to 20, your teenage years, young adult age, you have a chance of becoming addicted for a longer period of time and stronger addiction than if you start using later. That's why I would support something like drinking ages and, you know, smoking ages, because in those early ages, the dorsal portion of your brain is growing faster. As I mentioned earlier, that's the portion of the brain that codes for things like if you're hungry, you're thirsty, things like that, okay?
That's the back of your brain?
Back of your brain.
Okay.
And that grows faster in a younger person. The front of your brain is more the control center. So imagine the brain as a factory. The front is the control center, management. The back is the working staff. The management normally has control, to some extent, over your working staff. But when you take alcohol and other drugs of addiction, psychotropic drugs, the brain gets reversed, so to speak. So your impulses are fed more. You have less impulse control. So as a result, when you take a drug at those earlier ages, it tends to make you more addicted for life, or at least for a longer period of time. Or the chances of you being addicted is greater. So all the different things that can happen now to your body, not only just the brain, but it can happen to your body for drinking alcohol. Liver issues, kidney issues, heart, brain, you know, the physical issues that can happen to your body, skin issues. Those are now being more prevalent now because of early drug use.
Extraordinary. This is extraordinary. Are you having to treat young, for example, young people, especially girls, as you said, who are drinking more than boys, between those ages of 12 and 20? Are you having to be treating them for addiction? And what are the effects you're seeing?
Okay, I've had children as young as primary school level that have addiction problems right here in Antigua.
To alcohol?
Well, yes, alcohol. Alcohol, yes. I've had a primary school age student who was addicted to alcohol, and I have primary school ages with marijuana and cocaine. Okay, and they're not common, but at primary school level, I'm seeing it. Definitely teenage years, I've had almost all the drugs, even the party drugs and the exotic drugs and stuff like that. The psychedelics, we have them right here. Sometimes I don't know how these things get into Antigua, because some of them I haven't physically seen them with my eyes. But the students tell me, hey, they can find them, they know where to get them. I guess people involved in the party scene, you know, the fete scene, find it easier to get. Okay, and you know, Antigua is a very open border, very porous border with ships and planes and what have you. All these inlets we have, beaches. Sometimes these things come in here illegally, of course, and they get distributed to our youths.
Extraordinary. Let's talk about cannabis now, because to be clear, while the laws were decriminalized in relation to use of small amounts of personal use inside, for example, your home, you can't smoke on the streets, so that's illegal. You can't smoke tobacco or cannabis on the streets in public places.
And below a certain age, you should not be smoking either, period.
Exactly. And below, for example, children should never use cannabis.
Exactly.
Should never, okay? Let's talk about the fact that you mentioned this earlier before we took the break. The cannabis now is not the cannabis of several years ago. It's some of the strains are more potent, not strains, but some of them are more potent.
Yes.
Is it that is also one of the concerns for those who are using it, including young people who are using it illegally because they should not be using it? Is that one of the concerns why they're either becoming addicted or, having mental disorder as a result? And two, is it that they're mixing it with other things? What do you think?
Two things we see with cannabis, Garfield, of its own, especially the high potency cannabis. It has what we call the amotivational syndrome. And almost always when a young person comes to me and they kind of downplay how much cannabis they're using, one of the questions I ask them, what are the grades like in first form? That maybe before they start using cannabis. And they tell me you're getting A's and B's and whatever, 80s, 90s. What are your grades now in third form or fourth form? Oh, I'm barely pulling a 50. Okay, or I'm barely going to school now. The amotivational syndrome is seeing that because the drug is so strong, it's taking it away from your studies. Now again, I have to emphasize that we're seeing that more commonly now because of the hybrid, cannabis that being used as opposed to, like I say, grandfather's cannabis. Now the second thing we're seeing with the mixing now, we are seeing now the dangerous effects of cannabis as it pertains to your psyche. So we're having what we call the dissociative syndrome. Almost you're getting the appearance of someone who is schizophrenic or have bipolar disorder, manic depressive disorder, because of that mixing of cannabis with the nicotine and with other things is really messing up your brain. Now, even vaping can cause psychotic disorders as well. And I would say vaping nicotine, as opposed to even just cannabis.
Wow.
So those are the two things I want us to recognize, and regardless of how you feel about cannabis, because I certainly know that cannabis has medicinal uses. Patients with epilepsy, for example, is one of the best treatment for refractory epilepsy. Patients who have, let's say, 50 seizures in a day have used cannabis and bring it down to 2 seizures or less in a month.
That's
okay?
good. That's good.
So we have uses for cannabis. Cannabis, and like I said, nothing wrong with the plant. It's how you use it. So when we're going to smoke it to that high level, that high potency cannabis, then it causes problem. And I say, regardless of how you feel about it. And funny enough, Garfield, I hardly ever get called to see the child of a Rasta parent. Okay? Because the Rastafarians hardly ever, the real Rastafarians are hardly ever giving their children of a certain age cannabis. And if they use it, it's used in a communal setting where they know exactly what they're using. It's other children I'm seeing in Antigua who's stealing away somewhere on the street corner somewhere, some back street somewhere, getting cannabis and using it. And they're the ones that I have the problems with. Okay? They're the ones that are being called to see.
And they're having mental
and they're having mental
disorders as
health.
a result.
Oh yes, you're talking about drug-induced, what we call drug-induced psychosis, substance-induced psychosis, where the use of the drug is making them psychotic. Okay, literally psychotic. We are seeing drug-induced bipolar disorder, the manic depressive disorder, drug-induced depression, you know, drug-induced the anger, not so much with cannabis we've seen the anger, we've seen it more with some of the other drugs, cocaine maybe. But you know, when you're mixing the drugs now, then you don't know the effects. Like one time, I had some patients who were smoking bougainvillea leaves. You know, the bougainvillea petals.
Yes, of course.
So I said to them, if you smoke marijuana or nicotine, I know the effects, but when you smoke the bougainvillea, I have no clue what it's going to do to you. Okay? Wow. So with the mixing now, because they will add things to cannabis to make it burn in a different way. They even add something like formaldehyde that you use to embalm dead people.
People are doing that?
Yeah, man. And so when they add it, it kind of burns a different way. They get a different flavoring or whatever. It makes it dangerous and nasty, but people are using that. And if you see where they produce the cannabis in some places in the States, Garfield, you'll want to touch it.
Wow.
Okay? In some really nasty,
Filthy
dirty places
yes.
where these things are becoming part of the plant. And they deliberately add it to the plant because these things are making it more addictive and more dangerous. Because if you get somebody hooked, it's not just the fact that, what I mentioned earlier, the fact that it changes the brain and stuff. When you're not in your faculty anymore, then you're more hooked. Because you want to feel better. And the drug that's making you feel sick is a drug that you're craving to help you to feel better, so you constantly use it. So it's a vicious cycle, and the people who sell, who manufacture, who are doing this illegally, they know how to trap you in that whole, well, illegally or legally, they know how to trap you. Because the pharmaceutical companies as well, they manufacture drugs that can trap you as well. You know?
That's a whole new discussion for a whole new different show. I can tell you that, Dr. Simon.
Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Simon is opening up our eyes to see a lot of things here. Before we go to our last break, Dr. Simon, let me ask you this. What should parents who are watching this program now, because this is a major problem for children, right? Addiction. I mean, it's not just the substance addiction, drug-related addictions, but the other non-chemical addictions that you mentioned earlier. What should parents, what would be your advice to them?
From the start, you have to develop a relationship with your child. And that's why it's important to have family activities. It's important, Garfield, I say all the time, try to eat one meal every day with your family. Some of us who have crazy jobs like myself or maybe yourself,
Indeed.
It might be sometimes a bit difficult, but try as much as possible to have a meal with your family. Or if you can't have a meal with your family, in the morning, have some sort of morning devotion. If you're a praying person, pray with your children. You know, develop a relationship with your children. Talk to them about drugs. From the time my children probably can understand water, I talk to them about drugs and the effects of drugs. Because I don't want to be, as a doctor, to be in a hospital room somewhere, hospital emergency room, and see my son, who's now 20 years old, going on 21, crawling up on a hospital bed from a drug overdose. So I talk to them about it from time they're very small. But importantly, notice the changes in your children. Is the child expressive like he used to be? What are the grades in school? Is he interested in going to school? Let's say he used to go to church and his youth group at church, the Pathfinders or the Scouts and Brownies and stuff. Is he doing that anymore? Is the friends that he has, are the friends changing? Is he isolated? Physically, is he losing weight? Is he bathing? Is he taking care of himself? If he's combing his hair, brushing his teeth, you know those things. Is he grooming the way, he's using dress up, he's not doing that anymore. Now, not to say that those in themselves are signs of addiction, but when you put them all together, they could be very well signs of addiction.
Absolutely.
And it's definitely important now to be in tune to your children, talk to your children, know what they're going on, and don't be afraid to inspect their rooms. Don't be afraid to look at their devices. Have the relationship with the children to say, hey, as your parent, I'm looking at your device.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And
you have to take charge of your home.
That's responsibility, yes.
Especially men, we have to take charge of our homes. So it's very important as parents for us to, be in tune to these things when they changes, because quite often, Garfield, another thing as well too, children when they don't do well in school in the late primary ages, so let's say at the time of the 11 plus exam, common entrance exam, they don't do well. That's usually one of the period when we see they shift to drug use. For whatever reason, we put a lot of pressure on our children sometimes, and that's why I say all the time, careful the pressure you put on your children. Like with my children, I'm not putting any pressure on them. I say to them, only thing I tell them, hey, don't do anything that illegal, illicit, or going to bring disgrace to you or your family name. Okay? But if you want to go and clean the street, be the best street cleaner that there ever was, or there ever will be.
You're not putting pressure on them to be a doctor like you.
Not necessarily. They want to do that.
Yes, that's right.
One of my daughters want to do that.
Yes.
I'm actually nudging her another way, but she wants to do it, so I'm allowing her.
There you go.
Okay?
There you
but
go.
you see, when you put these kind of pressures on children, because sometimes I've had students, medical students, who tell me, Dr. Sam, I don't want to study medicine. They even tell me, Dr. Sam, I can talk to my parents. They do very well in school because they're very intelligent even in medical classes. They're doing very well, but they don't want to study medicine. And you can see sometimes the pressure it puts on them and how they get burnt out because of that.
Because their parents are pressuring them to do, because it seems to be, a kind of particular prestige about
being a lawyer, being a doctor, being an engineer, being a politician. So I said to them, don't put these pressures on your children. Listen to them in terms of, because for want of a different word, sometimes we're stuck with our careers for the rest of our lives. And if it's something that you love, sometimes work don't even seem like work. There's some days I go into the office and I feel so good, man, I don't want to leave the office.
Wow.
Okay? Wow. Because I enjoy seeing patients. It's the paperwork I don't like too much. But I enjoy seeing patients.
And interacting with
patients.
Yes,
As you see, I'm a very interactive person.
Indeed.
And I'm sure when you're doing your journalism into a story, man, you love it and you follow it.
Absolutely. That's my passion. Yeah.
So sometimes it don't seem like work. But when you're doing something that you don't really love, you might be just for the money or just for the prestige or just for whatever accolades you think you're going to get from it. It burns you out. Absolutely. And then drugs becomes the crutch when you get burnt out.
Before we go to the break now, and this is, we could continue this, as I said, for the entire night, but energy drinks, are they bad?
I remember some time ago I wrote this article called Of Rum and Red Bull, and the song was going around at the time. And
Be the Man song, yes.
Yes, man, and somebody called me and told me, hey, Doc, do an article on that. And the thing with rum and Red Bull is very deceptive, because alcohol is a sedative. The Red Bull that has stimulants, amphetamines and sugar, and they give you a stimulating effect. So what happens, imagine you're driving a car and you're drunk and you're taking your time driving. It's bad and bad enough. But imagine that you're driving under influence now, not only alcohol, but the rum and Red Bull, alcohol and amphetamine. And you're driving fast, but think you're driving slow. You're driving out of control, but you think you're in control. This is where the rum and Red Bull becomes even more dangerous. You're doing everything faster, but more uncoordinated. And it can be very dangerous. It can even stimulate the heart so much. There's sometimes people in these parties, they drink in these Red Bull energy drinks, stimulates the heart so much, and they mix it with alcohol, that it can cause the heart to get into cardiac arrest and die. Wow. We have had issues of people dying with cardiac arrest.
In Antigua?
Not in Antigua,
okay.
But I've heard of it from the literature in other places. But Garfield, I want to say something as well before I forget. Because we talk about rum and Red Bull, party drugs, date rape drugs. Now, funny enough, alcohol is the main date rape drugs. They did a study in the UK, and that have been repeated in other places, Australia, Canada, other places, where 97% of the women who have been date raped, the drug involved is alcohol. Not necessarily the drugs that we think about, that Rofinil and GHB and stuff like that, alcohol. Because women have a lesser capacity to process alcohol than men do, because of the enzymes that men have in abundance that women don't have. As a result, half of what will make a woman drunk half of what will make a man drunk will make a woman drunk. So if it takes 10 drinks to make a man drunk, maybe 5 for a woman or less. So when you go to a place, and especially women who are not necessarily used to liquor, they're in a place where they think they have to drink because the girls say, hey, let's drink, and they get drunk, and then they get raped. I've had patients right in Antigua who tell me, hey, they wake up after one of these fetes, know that somebody has sex with them, but don't know who, when, where, or why, or how.
And that is a horrible situation.
Oh, yes.
Alcohol addiction and the mixing is a challenge as well. When we come back, our final break, we go to our final break now. When we come back, we go into the anatomy of the brain. So Dr. Simon will take us into the brain and show us how these addictions, how these substances, such as alcohol, such as sedatives, such as stimulants, how they impact on the brain. When we come out, much more. Of course, if you have a burning question, just write it out on Facebook or call us 462-2996 when we come back. We'll have about 10 more minutes when we come back from this, our final break, to talk about so much with Dr. Alfonso Jerry Simon, an addiction specialist, when we come back on House Call. Stay with us.
We all know the Honorable Prime Minister Gaston Brown. He's not just a PM, he's also the Minister of Finance, Corporate Governance, and Public-Private Partnerships. But what does that mean? Let's talk about the Ministry of Finance. Think of Antigua and Barbuda as one big household. Somebody has to collect the money, pay the bills, and make sure there is enough to take care of everybody. That's what the ministry does for the country. They help pay for schools, roads, hospitals, police, and public services. So when a road gets fixed, a school gets upgraded, or nurses get paid, the Ministry of Finance helps to make that happen. They also bring new businesses and investments into the country so more people can get jobs and earn money. Basically, they make sure the country can grow, develop, and take care of its people. So yes, the Ministry of Finance is kind of like Antigua and Barbuda's money manager.
Welcome to Antigua Mars. These people have no behavior, they have no behavior. Welcome to Antigua Mars. Clear out how you know it's danger, how you know it's danger. When it comes to Mars, it's my deadly. We don't know love can develop so badly. Can't get enough. Welcome to Antigua Mars. These people have no behavior, they have no behavior. Them can't hold me back when the Iron Man push out. Redeem in your soul something I can live without. What I sweat out, we stand plenty now.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Our final segment here on House Calls, a discussion that is powerful, engaging, riveting, thought-provoking, eye-opening. Dr. Alfonso Jerry Simon is the doctor in the house. He's an addiction specialist, and he has been taking us through the psychological, physiological effects of these substances. We're focusing mainly on drug-related addictions, including alcohol, of course. Dr. Simon, so there's a cross-section of the brain that you've provided for us in one of your slides, and this is like a medical tutorial. I'm pretty sure the med-science students are following closely. We'll put that up, and then just talk me through this, please, in terms of the impact of these substances on the brain.
Well, that shows mainly in yellow, especially what you call the reward pathway or the dopamine pathway.
Okay.
So if you would stick your finger in your ears, and then maybe one finger in one ear and stick another one in the center of your head.
Right.
The joining of those 2 points is roughly where the reward pathway goes.
Okay.
Okay? And that is the area where drugs can stimulate and actually take over your brain, so to speak. But even more than that, Garfield, the different substances, the different chemicals in your brain are in different places to some extent. So where a stimulant might act, another substance might not act. They all tend to go through dopamine. That's the kind of anticipatory chemical, but then they lead you to other parts of the brain. And it's very important to recognize that the brain is such an important organ, which we know very little about, to be honest with you. We know more about, let's say, the human genome to maybe 98% than we know about the brain.
Wow.
Okay? So your brain has to be protected at all costs. And one of the things that these drugs do, they can damage your brain in certain ways, almost like a stroke. So for example, let's say you drink alcohol. Alcohol depletes something we call thiamine. That's the vitamin B1. And that can affect the area of your brain where, for speech, for understanding and for speech. Okay? It can also affect the area of the brain that can cause you to have seizures. Okay? So if we're not careful with alcohol use, that's why when a person withdraws from alcohol, not only do we give them something to prevent the withdrawal effects, but we also give them like the vitamin B1, that yellow thing that you might see in the bag. Sometimes you go to the hospital for patients when they get in the IV. It's usually vitamin B1 to help protect that brain. You have what we call Wernicke's syndrome, or Wernicke's-Korsakoff syndrome. And it's often seen when people are chronic alcoholics or people who withdraw from alcohol, and the B1 is depleted. What can happen with these patients? They start to have a staggered gait. They lack coordination. Their speech become very staggered, slurred. So when you listen to alcoholic over a long period of time, sometimes you hear that chronic kind of slurred speech. And also you hear something we call confabulation, is that the memory goes. The memory cells are killed off in the brain. And as a result, either giving you a story, they will give you a convoluted story. Not that they're
missing parts of it.
Not that they're deliberately telling lies. But let's say a red car goes down the road and hits a white man. They will tell you a white car went down and hit a red man. Okay? Because that's what they remember. And often that happens, they confabulate. So sometimes when I see posts on social media, one of the people are confabulating on alcohol, but that's another discussion. But definitely, that's what happen in the long-term effect. Not only that, with the killing of the brain cells, the damage of the brain cells, it can lead to things like Alzheimer's. Not that I'm saying that Alzheimer's is going to be caused by alcohol, because I'm not sure of the effect of that. But it can lead to dementia. Let me say dementia.
Okay.
It can lead to chronic dementia, where you don't have your faculty anymore. Okay? So earlier than what you would expect, a person who's an alcoholic, earlier than what you expect, they start to show signs of memory loss and dementia. Because there are people who live, like my aunt is 97 years old right now, still have her faculties about her. I don't know the great aunt who lived to be 104 years old. Faculty about her till the time when she died.
You have good genes in your family now.
Well, I hope I utilize it properly.
Indeed.
But then you have people who are as young as, let's say, 50 years old, chronic alcoholics, who start to show those signs of, of dementia because of alcohol use, alcoholic dementia. So it's very important that we recognize them and be very mindful. And not only alcohol, all the other drugs can do that as well too. Very mindful of what we're doing to our brain. Then we can go to the rest of the body. Your liver, alcohol chews up that liver, destroys that liver. Your kidneys, okay, your pancreas. The people who have pancreatic cancer and pancreatitis, which is deadly. Okay, both conditions are deadly, pancreatitis and pancreatic cancer. Alcohol is one of the main culprits. So it's very important, Garfield, that, and one thing I always tell patients, whether it's legal or illegal, whether your doctor prescribe it or not, any drug that's psychotropic, you can be addicted to it, and then from the addiction, the brain addiction, it can then take over the rest of your body with the side effects.
So here's a question, Dr. Simon. So the dopamine pathways, and this is like a reward pathway.
The reward pathway,
right.
yeah.
So in other words, it makes you feel good.
It makes you feel good. That's why you find people bungee jump and, well, I don't try those kind of things, swim with sharks and all these kind of things. They're getting that dopamine
They get a high from it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even before you get the high, because that's another thing with drugs, right? But another thing with drugs, let's say, and that's why when I gave you the definition before, earlier at the start, I tell you it's not only the habit, but also what it does to your brain is considered addiction. Because let's say you used to drink and you stopped drinking. But let's say when you drank, you used to go to a bar and hear a song, Making Believe. When the song plays, Garfield, you get triggered. Or you go on the plane, you don't drink anymore, but you go on the plane, and when the hostess is throwing the ice into the glass, that triggers you.
It triggers because of the sound of it.
In fact, I could tell you, that's the time when our patients left Crossroads Center, the most dangerous part of their recovery is that first part when they have to go back we'll go to the airport. You see Antigua rum, or English Harbor rum, whatever. Or when they go on the plane, sir, can I offer you a drink? Trigger. So sometimes you have somebody travel with them just to get them home, get them to their house, their doorsteps.
Without having taken a drink.
And if you can get them to the doorsteps, you have a chance.
Good.
And that's what we call salience. Because, and again, it's a brain thing. For example, if you would flash flashcards very quickly across the eye of someone who is an alcoholic, or not an alcoholic, they probably would not pick it up. Let's say flashcards of, let's say, rum bottles and drug paraphernalia, someone who's not an addict. They probably cannot tell. But let's say someone who's an addict, when you flash those cards quickly, faster than the eye can literally pick it up, their subconscious is going to pick it up. Okay, because of what we call salience, the changes that occur in their brain. That's why addiction is so powerful. Absolutely. Anything that you're addicted to, Garfield, it controls you. Anything that you're addicted to, it controls you.
So this dopamine, all of these drugs impact on this dopamine pathway? So
Yes.
always, whether it be sedatives, whether it be stimulants, opioids, whatever.
Even though those things are not drugs, gambling, sugar, they all affect the dopamine pathway because dopamine, like I said, is an anticipatory drug. Before you even drink the alcohol, the dopamine has already been secreted because you're anticipating the high you're going to get, well, the low or high you're going to get from the alcohol. Same thing with the cocaine, same thing with the gambling, same thing with any activity that you really love, that you get that rush from, the bungee jumping and things like that. So if it's to a level where it's an addiction now, that dopamine is always firing. And after a while, it kind of burns out because of negative feedback, what we call negative feedback. After a while, the dopamine cells, the dopamine receptor is going to get depleted. And when they get depleted now, this is where you start to get those problems with the real addiction and all sorts of things in your brain. The brain changes. As I mentioned, when you look at a PET scan of the brain changes because physically, chemically, the brain is going to change.
Of the drugs that you're seeing mostly used in Antigua, Barbuda, which one has the biggest effect on the dopamine pathway and the biggest impact on, for example, which one has the biggest risk of mental challenges, mental illness?
I would say, because they use so many drugs in Antigua, so although cannabis might be used more, okay, and alcohol might be used more, there are some that have a very faster action. For example, let's take MDMA, that is ecstasy, has a very fast action on the brain. Now, that's methyl diethyl methamphetamine, or Molly. The street name is called Molly. The street form is called Molly. We have patients right now in Antigua using that. And these drugs, because of their fast effect on the brain and their strong effect on the brain, they can be very deadly. They can spin you from one or two uses, spin you into the mental issues, okay? For example, there's one called GHB, gamma hydrobutyric acid. A lot of musicians and stuff use it. I mean, worldwide musicians and stuff like that. And that can actually cause a lot of addiction problems in a short time. Another drug that is used often, and people sometimes don't think it does, what they call the Z pills or Z pills, Zolpidem, Ambien. They were promoted as medication that you can take as opposed to benzodiazepines and say that they're not as addictive. But believe you me, those addictions are even sometimes more dangerous than the benzodiazepines. Wow. Because benzodiazepines have what we call a wide therapeutic window. If I have a patient who's taken, let's say 100 milligrams of Valium a day, which is a high dose, I can safely get them down from 100 milligrams a day to nothing over a reasonable period of time. When you're taking something like Zolpidem and Ambien and the Z pills, the sleeping pills, because they have a smaller therapeutic window, that is the area where they are effective as opposed to the area where they will kill you. Okay? You have to be careful with the withdrawal. Okay? So for example, with a benzodiazepine, 5 milligrams can be effective, and you might have to take maybe 200 milligrams before it's dangerous to your body, before it kills you.
Wow.
Or before it's toxic to your body. Okay?
Very short.
So he has a wide therapeutic window. But then something like the Z pill, Ambien, has a much smaller therapeutic window. Okay? Let's say between 5 and 10 milligrams. Okay? So it means then those medications you have to be careful with, and we see addiction with those medications as well. Okay?
Extraordinary, extraordinary. We'll have to get you back another time. But before, in the 90 seconds we have left in the program, Doc, individuals watching this program, they themselves might have some sort of addiction, whether it be drug-related or non-chemical related, or they know somebody, a member of their family, or a friend who is in need of help. What are the resources that are available?
Luckily in Antigua, we have one of the greatest centers in the world in terms of addiction, Crossroads Center Antigua. I'm not working there now, but I know at the time I was there, it was free for all residents of Antigua and Barbuda, and I still believe it is, whether or not you're from here, as long as you're a resident here.
Right.
And it's a resource that we can utilize. The number there is 562-0035. So you can call that number and ask to speak to an admission counselor. They will, kind of diagnose you and tell you if you need to be there or you can get help other places. We also have drug addiction treatment from the government of Antigua and Barbuda. I think we need to beef that up a bit more. I want to start a program as well. In fact, I'm trying to meet with the Minister of Health and others because I see the need for it. I deal with patients one-on-one, but dealing with patients one-on-one can get you so far. I need to have these students in school to get them in a place where I can really have a bigger impact. Also, you know, I just want to talk about the social aspect of us as well. The churches, some churches have programs, schools in general. We all have to be our brother's keeper. Our neighbors, if you notice something in your neighbor's children, you have to point that out so that that person can get the help they need. But for now, the best center would be Crossroads Center. They have a halfway house called Bevan House that's close to the Transport Board that they do addiction counseling as well. And they have other AA clubs around the island. I think they have a register for the AA clubs. You can get that online as well too. So those are some of the resources that we have.
So several resources available to assist individuals to ensure that if they have a problem, if you have a problem, there's help available. Don't think that.
And I'm also available as an addiction specialist. Someone can call me at 462-0631 at NSA Medical Center and ask for my assistance. Yeah, 462-0631.
Okay.
Okay. I'll be glad to help those who I can.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being so helpful on this, Dr. Simon. 462-0631.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So that's the number for Dr. Simon's office, and he'll of course be in a position to assist you as much as he can.
And I can point you to where you need, if you need greater help. I can point you to where you need greater help.
Absolutely. Addiction is a big challenge here, as is the case in so many places around the world, certainly in the Caribbean. And there are so many triggers for addiction. There are so many sources of addiction. Dr. Simon has taken us through some of them, the main ones, mainly the drug-related ones. But there are others, of course, that we mentioned as well. And they have both psychological as well as physiological impacts. So impacts on the brain, impacts on the body. You have to ensure that you stay away. This is one case where prevention is much better than cure. Prevention is much better than cure. Focus on that one, please. We want to ensure that we are able to assist those who have addictions and to prevent those who don't have addictions from getting addicted. That's been our program for this week. Really appreciate Dr. Alfonso Jerry Simon, the doctor of the house, addiction specialist, and an expert on all these matters, for sharing his immense insights. And he's seen these cases every day. He's seeing them as we speak. And what has been extraordinary from what he said earlier, of the many extraordinary things he said, was that he's seeing primary school age children who are addicted to substances. We have to fix that, don't we? And it's an all-of-society approach that has to be used. This has been a program. Really appreciate the company. I'm Garfield Burford on behalf of our executive producer, Ernie Brathwaite, and our producer, Aaron Mickle, the rest of the team here at ABS. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate the company. Bye-bye. See you next week.
Thank you very much.